I wanted to proceed to introduce our panel and then make a few comments myself to kind of frame the discussion. We are fortunate to have with us some of the key people to address this issue that we could ever want. We'll begin when we go to the panel with Chief Dwayne Perry, who is the chief of the Ramapos. We then will move to the mayor of Mahwah, New Jersey, William LaFlorette, who we're pleased to have with us. Then the sub-chief of the Ramapos, Vincent Mann, will speak. And then we have a third sub-chief, Richard DeGroat, who will say a few words. Then we'll move to some perspective. We have Attorney Judith Sullivan, who is the head of the Ramapo Conservancy and works very closely with the Ramapos. We have Dr. Ed Lennick, who I guess we'll put on before Judy, who is really the principal expert on the prehistory of this region and who speaks with authority and writes with authority about the history and the origins of the Ramapo Lenape. And then we'll conclude with Chuck Stead, who is you heard from a moment ago, who's an adjunct professor here and works for Cornell Cooperative Extension, and who has worked very closely with our students in addressing issues relating to the Ramapos, particularly around environmental contamination. I wanted to just reflect on this notion of recurrent stigma and the idea of stigma and frame where it's coming from, and all the speakers will elaborate on these points. I'm merely going to suggest them as we get started. The concept of social stigma was developed in the academic world by a sociologist named Irving Goffman. And it's important that Goffman notes two characteristics of stigma that are key. One is what he called the mark, or some attribute or characteristic which, if known, is demeaning. The mark does not need to be true. It can be a misleading or errant piece of information, but it is considered to be detrimental to the identity of the person with the stigma. The second key characteristic is visibility. Something has to make that mark seen. It has to become, people have to become aware of it. And once aware of it, the outcome is that they devalue or deprecate, they may avoid the person with the stigma. In my own work on environmental contamination over the past 35 years, I developed very early on a notion of environmental stigma, building on Goffman, in which one begins to recognize a number of characteristics that also may be of importance here. That people who are stigmatized often find themselves in environments that are contaminated, that living in a contaminated environment is stigmatizing to that environment, and then by association it's also stigmatizing to the people associated with it. And so we have two kinds of stigma that interact with each other at play in the Ramapos. And historically, if we go to the next slide, there are a whole set of issues here, which I'm just going to, I won't read the whole slide, but stigma and marginalization has been something that has affected the Ramapo people over time, and they've really had to fight to establish their identity. And of course, with the forward contamination of the mountains, environmental stigma has also been a major characteristic here. Let's move to the next slide. And one of the things that we see in the recent period, which is very wonderful, is a strong renewing of identity for the Ramapo Lenape people. And this has been a period in which there's been a lot of self-identity and collective identity addressed. We also are moving toward finally, maybe some environmental cleanups. People are addressing threats to the Ramapos, like the gas pipelines that are coming through, and are doing everything they can to counter the stigma that has been occurring. And that sets the kind of context in which this movie, Out of the Furnace, comes out. And we can go to the next selection. It's a major film. If you're not familiar with it, it's produced by people like Ridley Scott and his brother, like Leonardo DiCaprio. It has many iconic actors, including Woody Harrelson, Forrest Whitaker, Casey Affleck, Sam Shepard, Christian Bale, William Dafoe. This is a major production, and as we'll see, there are elements of this movie that bring back and renew the issues of stigma for the Ramapo people, and also for the Ramapo Mountains, and by extension, for everything associated with this region, including our college. Relativity Media, which produced the film, has made the usual disclaimers. They've said that this is not based on any particular person or group of people. As in the case of most films, the filmmakers conducted research and drew upon their own personal life experiences in creating an original screenplay, and the story and the characters are entirely fictional. And we have, of course, the interesting question of the arts and the critique of the arts in terms of the issues they raise. If we look at the reviews, however, that have been written about this, we see issues of stigma raised by reviewers. David Edelstein, who is not a relative of mine, at least that I know of. Next slide. Oh, good. He said that a movie like Out of the Furnace needs an especially sadistic psychopath to hold our interest, and it has one in Woody Harrelson as a man called Harlan DeGroat. He originates brutal fights, steals drugs, and kills people in the rough hills of Bergen County, New Jersey. Snark aside, there is actually a fair amount of mystery that shrouds Jersey's Ramapo mountain range, and a glance this morning at the local headlines confirms that its denizens are fighting mad over Cooper's use of family names of current Ramapo Native Americans, in particular DeGroat and Van Dunk. I don't blame them a bit for thinking they've been slimed. Harrelson looks like the scarred, lurching, inbred cannibal Pluto played by Michael Berryman in Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. Injecting what appears to be meth between his toes is literally the sanest thing he does in the whole film. So if you haven't seen it, that's a pretty striking characterization by the reviewer, who then ends his review by saying, "Backwoods, inbred portal of hell that is Bergen County, New Jersey. Ozarks moviegoers will know that they dodged a bullet." So the region is attacked. In the New York Post review, they explicitly talk about the Ramapo Mountain Indians, describing them as hillbillies who live in a self-contained world of drugs, violence, and trailer homes. The impoverished Ramapo's have long been ridiculed for their unsophisticated ways, including feasting on squirrel. To get around there mostly on paved roads on ATVs, tribe members are known to largely marry among themselves. And then there's a link to a very unfortunate and tragic, inaccurately described confrontation that led to the death of a member of the Ramapos. So there are a lot of interesting questions that are raised. What is the fine line between art and hate statements? What are the imputed motives? What we know is that stigmatizing hate elements are raised in the film. They make the Ramapo stigma visible and available to a large number of moviegoers and people aware of the film, and therefore victimizes the Ramapos. And whether it's intended or not, it becomes a source of injustice. So those are some points I wanted to make to frame the conversation. Let me turn the floor over to Chief Perry to make a statement.
Thank you, Professor. My main interest here is because the degradation is generational. And I'm more than interested in, one, how do we ameliorate this going forward, and what processes can we employ that's sustainable to ensure that this type of stigmatization doesn't happen again. This is, I would say, every 10 or 15 years, the ugly head of racism. I think we should call it what it is. It's racism and hate rears its head. We've gone from violence study, where we've learned about subhumans, and Mr. Hitler's crew has awarded the Iron Cross for good work here in New Jersey. We've moved up to a Ford plant where they've kindly built a plant on one of our last longhouses, the place that Mulwall's named after, Aki and De Mawe Long, the land where the people gather. Little known is before they dumped toxins on their people in Ringwood, they wanted to put high-end homes up there. When the Ramapo people refused to give up their homes for high-end homes of strangers, it then became acceptable to dump toxins and to revisit all of the lovely stories of squirrels and inbred things. I'd just like to address this whole story of being inbred, mainly because that's one of the first things that appears to a well-raised, pure-blooded bigot. In the mid-1700s, there was a law passed that said if you used a tribal name, a tribal ceremony, a tribal dress, you could be executed on the spot. To that end, if you recall the names and history of Van Dunk, Man, de Groot, they basically belonged to local governors. What would happen essentially if everybody in this room was out gathering in the forest, and we ran up onto our kind-hearted slavers, the Dutch at the time, everyone would give the name of someone we would understand to be friendly. So if the friendly person's name was Knucklehead, everybody in this room would tell that man with them pantyhose on, that blunderbuss, their name was Knucklehead. Fast forward to today, then that means everybody in the room married somebody called Knucklehead. Knucklehead's mother, Knucklehead's cousin, Knucklehead's sister, Knucklehead's brother. So what I'm saying is sharing here is that the essential part of history has been left out. That it was either to adopt all of these names and to pursue forward as a tribal people or to perish. The key of racism is so insidious and even lasts today in terms of the name Ramapo. The spelling of Ramapo, which is used by this good college, by the police department, the river, the hills, and many other municipalities, is the way the tribal people spelled it. But if we were to maintain our identity and understand that you could be summarily executed for using native names, we were allowed to use the Dutch spelling. So for those who are curious and want to know why we use the Dutch spelling, it was that or die. At any rate, it seems that we are revisited with some form of hate and indeed racism every 10 or 15 years. And here we are today. I understand that Mr. Cooper said he wrote from experience, from his research. I don't know what that was. No one I know has ever spoke to Mr. Cooper. It seems to be the same MO that Mr. Cohen used. I believe when we ran into Mr. Cohen in a public forum, he said the same thing. He did research. One of the beautiful things about Mr. Cohen's work, he had a picture of my home in the middle of the centerfold. But when I asked him if he knew anybody in the house or if he knew me or anybody lived there, when he realized I was the person whose home he had put in his book, he got off the stage and disappeared. Well, that's all fine and good, but what I'm interested today in doing is what I said to begin with. I'm looking at what is a sustainable process to eliminate the stigma and to move forward as a tribal unity. Because what happens today, in particular, because of so many A-listed actors, the stigma is going to be deeper and it's going to run much longer, and it's as destructive as murder. You're destroying the spirits and the soul of our children, and it goes on for generation after generation after generation. And we've already seen, just in the last few weeks, people's been called some very ugly names coming out of theaters. Children have been accosted in parts of New Jersey, using some very deleterious language. So what I would like each of you to think about, and as we move forward, is what processes can we honestly employ to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Bill Uffert. Thank you all for coming. I grew up in Mawa. I came here when I was 6 years old. I was born in Canada, as Dr. Mercer and I like to believe the Canadians were going to take over. We didn't manage to do that, but I grew up in Mawa. Many of my friends, we played football together, we socialized together, we worked community. We didn't define it as racism. You know, it was growing up. And the growing up wasn't very pretty at times. There was an altercation with a particular friend. Before you knew it, it involved 5 people from my side and 5 people from their side, and it was just a snowball event. It got resolved. We didn't know better. As we grow up and we learn more about the devastating fact of racism, you start to understand the impact. And growing up here, it is a tremendous humbling experience of being mayor now. I can tell you that all of the bad parts had been forgotten through generations, through a lot of work with the schools, police departments, Chief Perry, the tribe, and just society in general did a great job of moving this to the back burner. Well, unresolved, it is diminished until one day as mayor, Judith Sullivan sent me a review from the New York Post, and I wish that review were sitting behind me, because that's what got me engaged. That review was terrible. We called Dr. Schoen, the superintendent of schools, we met with the chief of police and Chief Perry. I will tell you, this is the first time in the history of Mawa that I can recall that this community has stood shoulder to shoulder with this community called the Ramapo Mountain Indians. It is a moment in our history, and we take it very, very seriously. And the core concern we have is for the children in our schools to have to relive those stigmas, those things, those divisions again. That's our concern. You know, we had a press conference, and it's very empowering as a mayor to sit in front of the press. And, you know, there were several there, and it makes us feel pretty good. But one of the questions was, hey, will you go see the movie? And they expected me to say, probably not. Like my $20 would make the movie fail. And I said, you know, surprisingly, I'm going. I'm going to get in my car right now, and I'm driving to New York City, where the premiere was, or one of the showings was. And I said, all of you are invited to come with me. One person from the Bergen Record, Allison Prius, got in her car and followed me to the movies. The good news is we went to the movies to see this movie. Bad news that I had to call my wife and tell her that I was with another woman. I hadn't been to the movies with my wife in 30 years. And how can I explain this? You know, we sat through the movie. And I have to see it through my eyes since I'm 6 years old. And I see it through my eyes. And when we walked out of the movie theater, I said to Allison, you need to interview me right now. You need to ask me these questions all over again. And I will tell you that I came out of there more infuriated and more angry than I went in after reading the Post. We have stood shoulder to shoulder, the chief, our community, members of this community, and we will continue to do that because it's important to us. It's important that what the chief points to is what comes next. We want to pick up the pieces in our community and put them back together. I'm not against the movie. In fact, I encourage you to go. You'll go there and you'll see scenes that are implied. If you have ever traveled the Ramapo Mountains or Stag Hill, you'll say, oh, that looks like it. There are factual relationships between the Ramapo's. The producers seem to say that it's fictional. I can tell you, I was talk to them any day, anywhere, and tell them that's absolutely not the truth. Just as of yesterday, we have a mayor from the name of the town of Pennsylvania, Braddock, Pennsylvania. He's probably a guy just like me. And probably what you might expect from a mayor is to try to self-perpetuate or grow some kind of fame out of this whole media thing. That's not why I'm here. But I suggest that this mayor may be The competition for Oscars and Emmys is a multi-million-dollar business. And he's written a letter to Variety to essentially say that this movie should not be harmed, nor the actors harmed for their participation in this movie. And my response is, a letter to Variety will not change my opinion of how strongly I feel, we feel as a community, how the tribe feels about this movie. For me, I'll tell you that I'm going to call the mayor, and I'm going to have a very intelligent conversation with him, because at the expense of our community, you cannot promote this film. You know, we're sincere about this. We had some reporters want to go up on Stag Hill and take pictures, and I was, you know, you're just furthering their cause. It's shocking to hear that up on Stag Hill is probably one of the most beautiful views of the World Trade Center there is in probably this state. People are shocked by this. This is not in the backwoods of Appalachia or some backwoods community. This is in a place that's in the eye shot of New York City in Bergen County. This is no game. We take it very seriously. We're concerned about the children. We have zero tolerance in the school system. All teachers and administrators are on notice. We will do everything in our power to protect these kids from having to relive the very stigmas that the chief alludes to. They were not pretty. There's no reason why a filmmaker can stake claim to the factual and the implied in this movie. Out of the furnace is out of bounds. Thank you.
Chief Man, can we hear from you next? Pass the mic down. Well, there's another mic there. Yeah. And then.
My name is Chief Vincent Mann. I'm the sub-chief of the tribe. I'm also the Turtle Clan chief, which is Passaic County, notably Ringwood. I did go see this movie, and it was 5 days after I first was given the article from the Post. And you can hear it in my voice, I am still very emotional. Crying every day for 2 weeks. What this movie has really done, I'm 45 years old, and I had to relive all that pain. It's important for me to be able to speak in front of you and to show you that I'm a real person, and the tears that come down my face, because it's not just for me and what's happened to me as a kid, but it's because our kids are starting to have to relive what I went through, what all these other Ramapos that are my age or older had to go through. The big issue is that, like the mayor alluded to, is that when it was one-on-one and we fought, and whoever won, and nobody really cared. And if it was two of them and one of me, then I got my butt kicked. And that's where it ended. And now, because of a portrayal of a people, we find that it's all over the world. You know, my friends that I used to fish with, that trusted me fishing with them at night on an outgoing tide that runs 7 to 12 miles an hour, knew if they slipped that I'd grab them by the back of their neck and save their life. And those very people are on the blogs, on that very fishing website, talking all this stuff. You know, we have some superintendents here today. We have the mayor of Mulwa here today. We reached out to the mayor of Ringwood today, or yesterday, or the day before, and she chose to let us know that she couldn't make it here today because she had to work. That type of stuff is what we need to be trying to figure out. How do we eliminate that? That's at the very top of the people who are there to support and take care of my family. And yet, that person can't find the time in her day to do her job, which is to be a mayor, because myself and Chief Perry and Chief DeGroat have to be chiefs 24 hours a day. I carry 2 cell phones. I go off day and night. In the movie, we actually do have some clips, and we're trying to work on them right now, but some of the portrayals in there, when Christian Bale decides that he's going to come to Bergen County, Ramapo Mountains, New Jersey. And he's coming there because he wants to find out what happened to his brother. His brother went there to fight and subsequently was killed by Harlan DeGroat. And when he first gets there, he pulls into this dirt parking lot. And as a kid, I can remember it being a store in a dirt parking lot, right, because it wasn't paved. And what ends up happening is that he comes up to a group of kids there, and because I am who I am, I'm relating that they're Ramapo, and that's what they're supposed to be depicted as. And he comes up to this red Chevy Chevelle, and he starts asking, oh, it's this year. And he's like, oh, it's a Valero red paint. And the way the camera picks up on it, it's just as if it was you were watching Man versus Ford. And then he talks about the 4-speed Muncie transmission. We're in Muncie. You can go to Canada and ask, because they pass it down through the tradition who we are. You can go to the history books and find out who we are. You can look at the article in 1923 for the canoe found in Woodick Lake that was recorded as being Ramapo, and it was ancient. That's why this is Ramapo College and Ramapo River, Ramapo Mountains, Ramapo Pass, Ramapo people. The other thing that they bring up in the movie is the interior of the car, and it's tuxedo black. I just mentioned 3 things without mentioning anybody's name. This movie has clearly been aimed at us. It is a hate crime. We are the people who are sitting here suffering. And if this was to go live and anybody out there in the world can hear me, I would request the President of the United States to come here and the governor of this state and the governor of New York State, because we're being attacked. And just like they want to go over to Syria and bomb them because of what they're doing to those people, it's the same thing here. The Ramapo can't go to our federal government and ask them to go to war against themselves. I mean, how do we stop the snowball? It's been let out, and it's growing, and it's growing, and it's bigger than this place. And the only people to sit there and catch it is us, and the people that are here to support us. And that weight's going to be so heavy that you got to make sure that when you want to stand beside the Ramapo, that you're going to be willing to do it. It's not fist fights anymore. All that stuff up there is stigmas. Through our help, Judy Sullivan, I owe her, the tribe owes her, and all of the people in this region in Ramapo Mountains owe her, because she stood behind us, and we fought with the governments and the gas pipeline people, right, to make it so that we could have a voice, so we could be there to protect our ancestors' stuff, and not only their stuff, to protect the water source that everybody here drinks from. So the Ramapo were able to be on, as the condition of the permit, they had to have continual communications, and they had to have us on the pipelines as monitors. And it wasn't just to protect us, it was to protect everybody here's way of life. The very way of life that Scott Cooper and whoever else was behind all of this has set out to take down. It's not just the Ramapo that are sitting there fighting, but we're in a hot seat. I sat there and had to listen in the safety classes that they were giving for the people that were coming from miles and miles away for the 400 jobs that were going to be created for this place. And they had less than 10% of the local people. And in 2 days' time, it wasn't the people who came here that said, when they wanted to go to the computer and they typed in Ramapo, what do you think they saw? 3,000 hits of prejudice and racism. So then they themselves began to be the very thing that they were reading, and they came here. And it wasn't those people who were actually hate-minded that came to me, it was the ones that had a good heart. And they came up to me 12 times in 2 days. And I could tell them back what they wanted to ask me without them asking me. And they wanted to know what it meant, what was a Jackson White, what it meant to be a Jackson White. And every single time I had to dig deep down inside myself and hold back my tears and hold back my anger. And I began to educate them. And I'm sure that when they left here, they probably left here with a different thought. I just want to end this on one other note. 2 years ago, we had a movie night up at our tribal office on top of Stag Hill, and we invited everybody. And there was more non-native people there than native people. And I happened to be there in my moccasins, a Ramapo t-shirt, earrings, necklace, rings. And this truck pulls up with 3 kids in it. And the kid gets driving and jumps out, and he comes running up to me and says, I want to know where the Jackson Whites are. Can you tell me where they are? And I was stunned. I almost didn't know what to say to him. And I didn't think I even heard him right, so I asked him to say it again. And he did. And I told him to go to the truck, turn it off, and tell your friends to get out. And tell them to get out now. He looked at me like he was scared. And I didn't want him to be scared. But some of that anger that I have came out. And so I began to ask them where they lived. Okay, they were from one of the richest areas around here. I asked them, well, how did you find out about this? Well, on the computer. Right, we're in New Jersey. We made several attempts to them for our lawyer, Miss Sullivan, sent letters to them and everything, trying to get to drop the stuff they have on there. So I began to ask the Italian child that was there. I asked him. I said, "You're Italian?" He goes, "Yeah," with an attitude. I said, "Well, given the complexion of your skin, I would say that you're Sicilian." He said, "Yes." I said, "Do you know that the people that are from Italy and that are Italian, that are north of you, consider you to be an Nigger?" And he took a step back because he couldn't believe what he was hearing, because they came up there calling us that. And then I looked at the next kid, and he was Irish. And I asked him the very same thing. "You're Irish, right?" "Yes, I am." I said, "And you have nerve to be sitting in this truck coming up here too, because I have a book from the 1800s that's about this thick. And 90% of the runaway slaves in there are Irish descent. I've seen one Native American and one African American, neither of which had our name." And I told him, you don't have any right to do that. And then I looked at the last kid who was from India. And I told him, I said, "I don't even need to say anything to you." And so I went on to tell him a story about how our people that were pushed up here to the mountains, they had to grow vegetables up there that they couldn't grow down below. And one of those things was a potato. It wasn't a sea captain, it was a potato. That potato is still grown today in Maine. And when we came down to trade that for things that we couldn't buy, or didn't make, or whatever it was, people bought them. And when you continually do those things, people make reference, like a baki. Baki is somebody who makes baskets, yet the European colonialistic world we live in uses that as a derogatory term. Same thing with minis. And so, when they left there, I asked them, when somebody says to you, Jackson White, oh, by the way, that is the name of the potato, Jackson White. When somebody asks you if there's people called Jackson Whites, what are you going to say? And they told me, the 3 of them, that they were going to tell them there's no such person, there's no such race. And at that point, I realized the impact of my words, right? And there's 3 kids. And so I went to my truck, and I took out 3 business cards, and I gave them to them. And I told them that if they ever were in trouble, or ever needed help, or ever needed to talk, that they could call me. We can't do that. One of the only other things that we can do is, for my family in Ringwood, is to live on top of a Superfund site for 49 years. The Assembly and the Senate of New Jersey can pass a bill into a law in 6 days. The governor can sign it and bring help to Roxbury. For each one of those 300 homes are worth over $1 million apiece. Even contemplating removing them out of there because an air monitor went off. We had an air monitor go off too, but they didn't pass a law to come and help us. They did the same thing that they think they're going to do with this movie. They think they're just going to blow by, and Ramfos are going to be quiet. Ramfos aren't going to stand up anymore. And I got news for you. Nobody better ever take these tears for weakness, because everybody here should be ready to cry. We're human beings, we're your families, we're your friends, we cut your grass, we fix your car. And if you can trust us to fix your brakes on your car when you're driving down the road at 80 miles an hour, you sure as hell can trust us to be your neighbor. Our ceremonial land across the street, you know, we got a lot of pressure over there. It wasn't us that killed one of us, it was one of them that killed one of them. We have until January 6th to send in comments in the form of questions to the EPA. Robert Spiegel, who's sitting in front of me here with the very white hair, is a friend of ours. He's been fighting to help save our people's lives by asking that all of the contaminants that are there to be removed completely. We are even, Ramaphosa, are even going to be creating a team to go out to the mountains to find the rest of the paint sludge because there's 2.5 million people that drink that water, and it's not us. We're sitting here protecting the people who are south of us, west of us, east of us. And nobody's coming here to help our people. And if I got to stand on the top of the mountain with Chief Perry and Miss Sullivan and the mayor, Dr. Elderstein, Chuck Stead, Edward Lennox, who's proven our existence in these mountains for nearly 15,000 years, then I'll do it. And it's my hope that all of you will be there to do it with. So,
Chief DeGroat.
Thank you. My name is Richard DeGroat, the chief of the Martin Band in Staten Island. My grandparents came from Hillburn into Staten Island, so that's all I'll say about them. I happened to be in California, and I happened to see a movie. My children happened to be, two of them happened to be actresses there. They had no idea of what was going on. I saw it right away. And I'm not one of the people in the Post that eat squirrels for breakfast and lunch. I had to design multi-million-dollar buildings. I am at the growth. It's very hurtful. Hurtful to me as a profession, hateful to my children, my grandchildren. And it should be hateful for everybody in this building that's sitting here listening to me. It brings back a movie that I happened to see. And some of you probably saw it in there, and it happened to be, I'm making an analogy right now, it happened to be Time to Kill. And some of you that saw it, at the end of the movie, they were in the jury, and they were looking at this man's life who happened to kill somebody, who happened to rape his daughters. And the lawyer happened to be a white person helping his black friend, not native. And he said, you look at things differently through your eyes than we see through our eyes. And what he said was very poignant. He said, now shut your eyes and listen to me, what I'm trying to tell you. So when you shut your eyes, the same people that are being depicted in this movie, these hate crimes, that are having our children crying in school about being called Jackson Whites. And then you shut your eyes and you look at and you see that, no, these children are not Native American children, but all these children that are crying happen to be white children. I think you might change your attitude just a little bit. It's hard to step in somebody's shoes and walk in their shoes. So what I'm saying today is that we are working very hard to change this negative happening to something positive. And we need everybody's help. Because we are a good people. I don't live here. I happen to live in Staten Island, New York. It's where my grandparents, when they left here, they came here. But I come up here all the time to try to help. Try to help people. So again, I'm not going to be long. I'm just going to say we do need help. Because the same tears that run in my eyes, the same blood that runs in my veins, are the same blood that runs in your veins, and the same tears that run in your eyes. So again, thank you for having me. And again, we want to take this negative and make it a positive. I hope.
Chief Sullivan. Actually, should we do answers? Okay, Ed Lemmings.
Thank you very much. I'm a registered professional archaeologist, and I've been studying the Indian history of this region for over 30 years. What I'd like to do this afternoon in the next 10 minutes is to tell you the true story of the Ramapo Mountain people in 10 minutes. Now, bear with me. I've written some comments, and I'd like to read them to you. I have hiked in the Ramapo Mountains for several decades, following the area's rivers, streams, examining rock formations and wetlands in the search for evidence of Indian occupation. In addition, I have consulted published reports, manuscripts, archives, and individuals with knowledge of the area's Indian history. Collections of Indian artifacts, both in private hands and public repositories, were also examined and analyzed by me. Over many years, I have met and got to know many of the Indian people residing in the 3 Ramapo communities of Upper Ringwood, the Stag Hill section of West Mohawk, and Hillburn, New York. These individuals have willingly and freely shared their personal stories and knowledge of this mountainous and forested area. How do we read the past history and origin of the Ramapo Mountain people? Beginning in 1878 and extending to the present, unfortunately, many individuals in the Euro-American community continue to refer to the mountain people as Jackson Whites, a name they thoroughly dislike and reject, and you've heard that this morning. Local histories, such as the writings of John Storms, 1936, David Cohen, and the report of the Vineland Training School, 1917, helped to establish and perpetuate the inaccurate and prejudicial label. Throughout the 20th century, numerous newspaper articles and magazine articles, academic studies, and theses continued to malign and sully the mountain residents and ignore their strong belief in their Indian heritage. The latter is an important point to consider. All of these studies, reports, or articles told us virtually little or nothing about the Indian history of the Ramapo Mountain region. In my 2 previous books, I have copies here if you'd like to take a look at them, and one that I'm working on currently, I have attempted to show that archaeological research plus a diligent search and study of local history, folklore, oral accounts, traditions, and an analysis of material culture have contributed enormously to our understanding of Indian presence and lifeways in the Ramapo Mountains. Archaeological research in particular has been a significant source of information on Indian life and culture in the Ramapos, providing us with data not addressed in the historical record. To date, 352 Indian occupation sites have been documented by me in the region, spanning the entire period of Indian culture history. These data clearly show that the Indians did not leave this area as some of the history books tend to imply. Instead, they have been living in the mountains in plain sight. Archaeology has shown that the present-day Ramapo Mountain Indian people are the descendants of the late woodland ceramic period Indians who lived in the region with direct cultural roots going back to Paleo-Indian days. Also, numerous historical references to Indians living in the Northern Highlands region including their locations or sites, Indian deeds or sale of lands, material things, folklore and legends, Indian place names, domestic architecture such as the evolution of dwellings from rock shelters, wigwams, longhouses to log cabins, and early subsistence practices present strong, convincing support that the mountain people are descendants of the Indians that were here for over 12,000 years. I invite you now to take a closer look at the events and negative reports of the past and to honestly consider.
Sorry, I didn't know we were off.
I invite you to take a closer look at the events and negative reports of the past and to honestly consider the rich Indian history presented in my books. I invite you to stand upon Stag Hill or Split Rock on Hoevenkopf Mountain in West Mowar, or High Mountain in Hilburn, or Torn Mountain in Ramapo, or Black Rock, a sacred site in Sterling Forest State Park, or Hope Mountain, or Windbeam Mountain in Ringwood, and observe the area through native eyes. Stand atop these heights and look out at the green forest, rivers and streams. Despite the efforts of 19th and 20th century historians to write native people out of the region's history, the Ramapo Indian communities in Upper Ringwood, West Mowar, and Hilburn, sense of history, kinship, identity, and culture have persisted. The story of these Ramapo Lenape Indian people continues. Thank you.
Okay, Judy Sullivan.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Sullivan. I'm an attorney. I live in the Ramapo Mountains. I met the tribe a couple of years ago when I started a charity in my town. My husband and I saw a need for preserving open space in the mountains and for renovating historic buildings and for helping the community in connection with anything regarding the land. The name of the company is called Ramapo Conservancy. I invite you to go onto the Facebook page and you can see we have lots of photographs of the tribe, and I also do a lot of nature photography, so you can see a lot of the beautiful photographs of the area and some of the ways that Mr. Lennox was describing. I also sit on the board of trustees for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and I'm a practicing lawyer in New York and New Jersey for 26 years. I was trained in one of the biggest and finest law firms in the state, and we actually have just hired that firm to assist the tribe in connection with our attempt, again, at federal recognition status. It occurred to me, listening to some of the speakers, that you may not know some of the factual identifiers in the movie that connect the tribe so clearly and the mountains so clearly to the movie. How many people are aware of some of the identifiers? Anybody at all? Okay, good. So I'll tell you, we first became aware of the movie through the New York Post article, which was a very hateful article and has since been taken down by the New York Post, which actually shocked me because the New York Post really isn't afraid of anything. And I quickly went to the IMBD, I think it's called, not in the film business, admittedly, website, and looked to see what the cast of characters were and what the movie was all about. So Harlan DeGroat, as you heard here, is played by Woody Harrelson, and he is described in the Post article as an inbred, a sociopath, drug-dealing kingpin who's in charge of the mountains, and you can't go up there if you value your life. There's another character named Mr. Van Dunk, and Van Dunk is the former chief of the tribe for about 10 years. I don't think he's here today, but he's just a very gentle and lovely man, as are all of the tribal people that I have ever met, without exception. There are 7 out of the 25 characters listed on the IMDb website as Jackson Whites. They have no names. They're just listed as Jackson Whites. And they identify the word Ramapo for the Ramapo Mountains. And they also have a scene where they have Bergen County Police identified on the side of a police car. So to me, as a lawyer, I cannot believe that this film was approved by the legal department, because it's one thing to portray a group of people and to change the names and to change the identifiers, and then to say, as the producers have said in this movie, that's entirely fictional. The problem is they stumble when it comes to the identifiers. And no matter which legal theory I've been looking at for the past 2 weeks, I can't get around that. There's just no way to get around that. So I thought I would very briefly give you just some ideas, since I am the lawyer here, I suppose, to explain to you some of the areas and the laws that are designed in this country to protect something like this from happening. And also, there's some international laws that are affected too. There's the law of defamation in New Jersey, which I won't go into all the elements because of the time, but one of the defenses to defamation is truth. So there is no way they're going to be able to pose that kind of defense. They have an opinion defense, general reporting defense, and Section 230 Commercial Decency Act defense. I don't think any of those apply. So defamation is definitely something I think could be looked at here. I haven't had a chance to really study these things. I was telling my friends before I came, lawyers like to study things for a long time, but that's going to be an issue, I think, on an ongoing basis. There's also a tort called false light in New Jersey, which protects people from being put in a false light. So, for example, if they portray you and they didn't use the names, we could still possibly look at that as an area for protection. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, this is also a tort that's recognized in New Jersey. It's very painful for me to sit here without crying and listening to the tribal chiefs talk about what they've been going through. I sat through a 2-hour tribal meeting last Saturday and watched a lot of people going through a lot of pain. They don't understand why this was done. I frankly don't understand either, just as an aside. I did contact the movie studio and Mr. DiCaprio, and I also contacted every single major actor in the movie, and only one person got back to me through his secretary and said that Mr. Shepard was unavailable because he's at his home in New Mexico. So you don't work for 27 years killing yourself as a lawyer, as I have, and accomplish some pretty great things, and not have your emails or phone calls returned. It's not something I'm used to. Probably not a good idea to do, because we have a lot of questions. We want to know the answers. We want to know why they specifically used the name of de Groot, why they specifically used the name of Van Dunk. I'm going to explain it in a little bit. There's a concept in New Jersey called misappropriation of one's name for commercial use. That's also a problem. Yesterday I spent the whole afternoon talking to various national Indian rights groups. I spoke to the National Congress of American Indians. I spoke to the Native American Indian Trust. I spoke to a former recent delegate to the United Nations who worked specifically on the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. And I'm very careful when I call these people because I want to hear what their conclusions are. And their conclusions initially were the same as mine. This is a human rights violation. This is a hate crime. And I am not going to let the tribe suffer like this. And I don't think us as a community can let this happen. It hurts all of us. It hurts us emotionally. It hurts us in the eyes of our children. My son came home from school yesterday. I rarely talk about my personal life, although the tribe is very familiar with my son because he pretty much goes with me everywhere because I work so much. And he brought home a book called Pedro's Voyage last night from school. And he's going to be charged now for the next couple of days with writing reports about Pedro's voyage. And Pedro's voyage is about a fictional story of a little boy who, what do they call that when you go on the ship and you don't pay your way? I forgot that word. The stowaways on Christopher Columbus's ship. And my son is reading the book, and they're mocking the Native American tribes in the book. It's through the words of somebody who's speaking, but my son immediately burst into tears. I could not control him. He was so upset about the way that the Indians were perceived, and I started crying too. But I was also happy as a parent, because it showed me that I have succeeded in making my son aware that these things are wrong, and he has great compassion as a result, and I think he has a much broader way of going through life. And this is what we want to tell our children too. This isn't just the Ramapo problem. This is all of our problems. It affects the school, as someone said earlier. Anyway, you can look at the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. It's a huge, informative website on the United Nations. 144 countries signed on to it. It was made effective through a resolution by the UN. And there's ongoing studies and whatnot about it that you could study there. I also wrote down a couple of notes from my calls with the National Congress of American Indians. There's a huge effort underway, which is somewhat contemporaneous to what's going on here, about the elimination of Native names for sports teams. And it's a very big effort right now by the Native rights groups in Washington, and they've got some pretty cogent evidence. Over 600 civil rights organizations have signed on to their request for example, the Washington Redskins to change their names. We have some sports teams locally here. I think that also use that name, so I'm not really into sports, so I'm not sure, but that was one of the points I thought too when I saw the movie, and I said to my husband, I said, you know, you wouldn't see a movie that would list characters like Jackson White as, you know, some of the words that you can't even say because they're so offensive, right? So why would we accept a movie that has characters named Jackson White? It just doesn't make sense. And one of my friends was also saying to me driving over here that, you know, you could put yourself into that person's shoes. How does the DeGroat family feel now to be portrayed as you can see in the movie as Mr. DeGroat is in the movie, Mr. Harrelson. And I just wanted to close too, doing some research also. In 1973, Marlon Brando won an Academy Award for his acting abilities. I don't know, I didn't jot down the name of the movie because I was so stunned about what I read next. And he didn't accept the award. He sent a Native American to go and reject the award. He won for Best Actor, and he said he wanted to tell Hollywood that he would reject the award because he cannot accept the treatment of Native Americans in film and media. That was 1973. This is 2013. It shouldn't be this way anymore. So we are going to work very closely with the tribe to help the entire community. One more thing. I know I'm not supposed to talk this long. One of the things that we've been doing at the pipelines, too, that you've heard about, there are 2 natural gas pipelines, with a third that just got announced, that are being constructed in the Ramapo Mountains. And what the tribe has done for the community, as have people like Mr. Green, who I see in the audience, one of the first preserved space in Bergen County and a 300-acre farm on Route 202, is we have engaged the pipeline companies through a mediation, negotiation, whatever you want to call it, process, where we've gotten some great mitigation for the mountains for everyone's enjoyment. So we've gotten roads avoided, we've gotten many cultural resources mapped. We have, through my company, identified 23 new archaeological sites, and Mr. Lennick, who's our consulting archaeologist, who understates his intelligence and dominance in this field, has sat side by side with the community in these mountains. We've gotten them to agreed to donate some of the artifacts to my company, and they will be curated at a local museum, probably the Mawa Museum, instead of being sent to a box in Trenton. The reason why we were able to do this is because we were able to persuade the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to give the tribe Section 103 consulting status. And we've continued to get some great results. I'm also renovating the Van Allen House, which is in Oakland, on the corner of Franklin Avenue and 202. It's a 348-year-old house that was, and you may not know, the Bergen County seat for several years because the British had burned down our courthouse in Hackensack. And we plan on putting a big exposition in there about the Native American presence in the mountains and have it used as a launching point to learn more about the mountains. And that's really why I formed the company with my husband, because we were just so appalled and shocked that there's no way to really learn about what's in the mountains. So I invite you to go into the mountains and enjoy it and hike and see the beauty. And I see these people from Evo here. Everyone knows what I'm talking about, that you go in there and you think about things. And what Mr. Lennox is saying is true. You go to these places and you can feel the spirits. And it's so beautiful and so undisturbed, so close to New York. We're so lucky, and we can't have people in Hollywood ruining this for us. So I look to you for your support. We're always looking for volunteers. It's a fascinating group of things that I work on. It's just really just so rewarding personally and professionally. So thank you for coming. If you have any questions, I think we're going to come on.
Finally, to wrap up, Chuck Stitt.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great panel, but we're not done. I'm looking at a room full of people who are interested in this, who've come out to hear this. The majority of you, actually, the better half of you are young. Youth America. That's why we teach. That's what we're here for. And what I want you to do now is we're going to break up. You're all sitting at tables. We've got great speakers here. I want everybody to intermingle. Stay at your tables. We'll move around the room. I want you to strategize. It starts there. It starts with your dialogue. It starts with your willingness to engage and become empowered. There's a movie out there. It's not a good movie, but it ain't just a movie. There's other stuff out there too. And we're not going to let it get us down. We are going to engage. We are going to be a part of this dialogue. We are going to tell the narrative as it needs to be told. You know, when you tell these stories, and I'm talking to my students right now, when you go back and go home for the holidays and you see your folks and you tell these stories, they become your stories. When you talk about the Ramapos and you're telling the story, now it's a narrative that you're connected to. It needs to be true. It needs to be heartfelt. It needs to be filled with the emotion of what this moment is about. That's what I'm looking for here, and I know I'm seeing it, because I know my students. So, without any further ado, I would like to, for the next 20-25 minutes, have us move about into the room, have the students and the elders, all of us, I suppose, we're the elders, interact with the students, and then we'll come back together again with a little summary. I'll move around the table and see what you're up to. I'll make a list of what you're talking about, okay? Let's go. Thank you.
Briefly, I would just like to right away make the connection, because we have at this table 2 young people in school here who really have a clear sense of their path already. And the outcome from today would be to get them connected to the people in this room who would be the greatest inspiration for them. And this young woman right here would be really great if she could talk to Judy over here. She would be very interested in working in environmental law. And this young woman over here is very interested in diplomacy. And I told her that Chief Perry is very very much on top of the diplomacy. You know, so anybody in this room who is in those fields, if you could just take notice, we have two really awesome young women over here who want to take these messages forward.
Thank you.
I don't think I need that. And if you want to see diplomacy and you're going to put it on his lap, we're sister and brother, ain't we, dating? The fact of it is, I'm a Ramapo on my mother's side. I'm Penobscot from my father's side. But the situation has been going on for so long, and the injustice of it is not tolerated by other races. So to see it happening here in 2013 to us is just mind-boggling. So of course, like Chief Mann said, we impel you to please consider coming on board, supporting, participating, learning more. One thing out of my own culture that I really am not interested and worried about and concerned with, because I'm a traditionalist. I've been this way, going to stay this way, teach it to my grandchildren, teach it to my great-grandchildren, and we'll pass it on. I don't care if you folks think I eat squirrel. I don't really give a, you know what I mean? I don't care. That's irrelevant what I eat, because in your cultures and where you all come from, some of the things that you might sit down and think of as a delicacy, I'm going, what the are they eating? So that's irrelevant. The injustice that I am most concerned about, and will follow it till my dying day, is what you are doing to my youth. My crowd over here knows they're going to push on, I know this. But the community of children, and I spoke at a school just a few days ago down in the Lenape School in Marlwell, and I spoke. I took 150 pieces of artifacts from our community. And Ed knows me, I have a lot, don't I, Ed? I displayed it, went over wonderfully. And with all of that, I came out, went into the cafeteria and came in, and there was 3 of my kind, we'll say, there. And they said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I just did a presentation in your auditorium over there." They were cafeteria workers. They said, we didn't know you were coming. Then I'm going to make it brief, but I have to tell you this. Then some folks came up and said, "Oh, you really look like a Native American." Now I'll give you the other side. Do I? Okay, because I thought I looked like Cindy. The fact of it was, that was repeated to me about 5, 6 times, till I got to the point where I looked over at my 3 cousins sitting there handing out the little things to give the children their food. I said, "Yes, I am a real Indian." And so are they, because they're my cousins. Then the shock comes. So I think we're going to have to really step up to the plate and look as the man in the mirror to start with, and really assess what we feel about other people that are different than us. And then the next thing is make sure that our educational plane, our economical plane is evened out. Because I really don't care if you think I'm eating squirrel. Irrelevant. Thank you.
I have to tell you that I have eaten squirrel, and it's very good. My dad, Walt Stead, has a great squirrel recipe. I still use it, and it's a delicacy as far as I'm concerned. So just to defend squirrel, I've eaten squirrel.
Thank you, Cindy and Chuck. Other comments? Oh, okay. We'll go here next, but
I just want to bring a little bit more reality to this. I just got something on Facebook from a Ramapo, and they're making a comment. And the comment is, "You know what really pisses me off, Chief Man?" And they actually say Vincent. The comments by people who think they know us. It makes me want to hurt somebody. For the record, all of you people with your negative comments, you don't know shit about my people, so shut up. Who are you to make statements like that? You're a child. My people have suffered for years, way before you stupid children with Twinkies in your parents' eyes. So shut up. Don't talk about what you don't know. I am damn tired of all this crap. Damn tired of people talking about me and my people like you have a right to judge us. Damn you, shut up. When you have walked in my shoes, when you have lived my heartache, then you can speak. And doesn't get any more raw than that. I mean, that is, right now, this split second, somebody who is nowhere near this space. Because they're reading something that people have written. And that's my point. This is a global. This is not here in Marwell, it's not just here in Ringwood, it's not on Van Dunk Lane, it's not on Milligan Drive, it's not on Man Place, it's not at 27 Haskell Ave, which my grandmother had a door open the whole neighborhood. People who were no relation to us used to come there when I was a kid. We, the Ramapo, are trying to bring that back. We're trying to make everybody else realize what community is about. You know? It's about sharing that egg. You know, going to your next door neighbor, no matter whether they're 100 years old or if they're 15 years old, to help them shovel the snow or fix their car or fix their bicycle. You know, even to the point when you drive down Ramapo Road here, right, and you go down towards Oakland. And what's the name of the first park you see there on your right? Right, it's called Ramapo Reservation. So you want to talk about when our friends, Native people, come here from all over. They come all the way from the West Coast over here to the East Coast to visit us, and we show them our ceremonial lands, and we pray together and we do ceremonies. And then they drive down the street, and they're like, oh, you guys got a reservation. So how can you take all of that? It's not just here. We all have to speak with a voice that's so loud that it bounces off the moon, hits the sun, and comes up on the other side of this globe to make everybody hear it. You know, we have a friend over here, lost her daughter from cancer, right? Your other daughter has cancer. You have cancer. And she takes time out of her life, time out of her time that God or Creator has given her on this place left, for however long she has, and I hope it's longer than me, to take the time out to come here and help my people. That's a Ramapo. And she is what she is from this day forward. Thank you.
Somebody back here had their hand up.
Hello, I'm a student here at Ramapo, and at our table we eventually came to terms with that education would be a really great way to get this problem out. And we focused on, here at Ramapo, maybe, we weren't exactly sure about this, but whether there's a Native American or Native American minor on campus, we don't know about that, if there isn't, that there should be. And that maybe put the history of, where our name, as a college, our name comes from, and the town that we're in comes from, in orientation or in tours when students come to campus to say, oh, Ramapo, like, so that's where that's where the name comes from. Because as a student, I didn't know very much about it. And then also to have curriculum in a lot of the local schools so that everybody can be aware of these things. So she lived 25 minutes away from here and also didn't know very much about this.
I just want to, a thought came to me as I've been reflecting on this abundance of hate we're going to ameliorate. There appears to be a horde of hatred running through the entire country, and somehow, once again, it appears that the Ramapos are at the tip of that sword, that hatred. What I would like to do is ask everybody just to take a moment, maybe each morning, and to look in the mirror and to be the person you dreamed that would come to make a better world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To respond to the student in the back really quickly, the tribe has an excellent library on their website with timeline of history of the whole Ramapo Mountains area, and they have downloaded hundreds of books about the entire area. So you could get lost in there for days. I'm going to be also teaching, I forgot to mention, international studies at the school next semester. So, and I could be available to answer questions as a professor as well, but you could always email me at the Ramapo Conservancy email.
Judy, what's the website for the
It's RamapoLenapenation.org, I believe, right?
Tribal website?
Yeah, is that the address?
RamapoLenapenation.org, Lenape.
We have a gentleman ready to speak here.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Beekstangle. I'm the Executive Director of the Mawa Environmental Volunteers Organization, or MEVA. We work with the Ramapo Lenape Nation on a lot of different projects, mostly environmental work up on Stag Hill. Our table had a really interesting discussion about a bunch of different things, but resonating off of this young lady's point, we believe that the curriculum in the public school system could definitely be improved to teach specifically about the local history of the Ramapo Lenape Nation. I went through the public school system. They do not teach about it. And if they do, it's very, very minimal. So the public school system can have a better curriculum. Also, the Mawa Museum could very, very much reflect the history of the Ramapo Lenape better. Did you have something to say?
Ed Lennick is actually giving a lecture in February on one of his books at the Mawa Museum. And once we get the Van Allen House renovated, we'll have a whole section dedicated to the mountains and the area as well.
Rock on. And also with that said, the one other thing we pointed out, two other things we pointed out was that, we do a lot of work with different folks up on Stag Hill, cleaning up the pollution up there, cleaning up this trash and the dumping that's happened up there. And what we find is when we bring groups out, mostly from residents that are out of Mawa, people from all of Bergen County will come out there and volunteer with us, and they're using the same stigmas that we're talking about here today, the same words, the same terms to speak about the Ramapo Lenape. And what we're noticing is that they're older folks that are using these stigmas. So I think it's really important that when we're going throughout our everyday lives and you meet people using these stigmas is to immediately address that. Which I think it's crazy to me that I'm 22 and that this has been going on for many, many, many years, and at this stage we're still hearing these same words used and these same concepts used. So if we're not addressing it and saying that's not appropriate when that happens, it's just going to keep continuing. And the last thing we had was a really interesting suggestion, which was that perhaps Ramapo College could have a better connection with the tribe and working with them directly to address this, right? So I used to go to a college called Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. And that's based in Worcester in the Maine South area, which is a very impoverished ghetto. And Clark University has a whole program tied in with local not-for-profit organizations working to specifically address the disempowerment of that community. And I'm talking not only just a couple professors, but the whole school has a dedication to working with that community to address these problems. Now, I don't know what we could do with Ramapo College better, but I think there is an opportunity that Ramapo College can step up and work a lot more on this. Yeah.
Did you properly introduce yourself? Actually, did you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, you did. He also just won a major award, actually, in Trenton by the state government for his work. He's a very inspirational young man.
My name is Bob Spiegel. I am the Executive Director of the Edison Wetlands Association. And I think one of the things that can come out of this that would help the community would be for people to become empowered, to make sure that Ringwood and the homes that are up there, the folks don't have to live on a Superfund site anymore. They don't have to bury their children. They don't have to lose their elders. And EPA right now is getting ready to close the comment period on this cleanup. And they want to cap everything. They say there's no risk. They claim that there's no elevated cancers. And even if there is a little bit more lung cancer, it's because they all smoke. But the bottom line is, the key, we need people to contact EPA, and we want them to do another environmental justice assessment. They did one in 2006, and they buried it for 7 years. They never released it to the public. You know why? Because the lawsuit would have been changed. The residents would have won. It said in the draft that, in fact, the Ramapos are Native Americans. It said it right in the draft, clear as day. said that they never gave the deed to the land, that they just left and went to the mountains because the people that lived here at the time didn't want the mountains because there wasn't fertile ground. And it also said that they were harmed by Ford. So Lisa Jackson, who conveniently brought many members of the community, and you'll see it in Man v. Ford, up to Washington to talk about how she was their conscience, how she cared about them, and they were her family. Once she got in the office of power, that was it. And she could have clearly, before she left, just recently issued an order to clean up the entire community, but she didn't. And it kept the environmental justice assessment buried for 7 years until we found it by accident, and we told EPA, you must finalize this because at the bare minimum, because it says that they are Native Americans and because it says that they've been harmed by Ford, and at a bare minimum, we want that to be formalized. We want a real justice assessment, and they should include this movie in that because this is proof that there is environmental injustice in this community. EPA has the power to clean this entire site up and force Ford, a multi-billion-dollar company, to clean up the cultural and ancestral lands that the residents up there hunt on so that it's safe for them. But they won't unless you get involved. I would encourage you to call EPA, 212-637-3000. It's a very easy number to remember. Even I could remember it. And I, can't remember anything. You can ask Dana. But Judith Inc. is the regional administrator. Tell her to do a real environmental justice assessment and to clean up Ringwood, force Ford to clean up Ringwood. If you want to get involved, you can go to our website, ringwoodsuperfund.org, and find out about how to submit comments to EPA, or if you want to get involved. Chief Mann has been coming to the meetings and joined the CAG, and he has been a critical voice for the Ramapos. He has demanded that they stop killing his people, and I got to applaud him for taking on more work on top of the work that he's already been doing. Thank you, and please stay involved.
Hi, Troy Carrera from the Mauer Museum. I'd just like to follow up on this gentleman over here. We do have an exhibit at the Mauer Museum, and it's the neighborhoods of Mauer. One of the neighborhoods, of course, is Stag Hill, and I invite you to come in. We're open Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 1 to 4. A lot of work went into this exhibit. It tells the story of the people that live on Stag Hill. We had a lot of cooperation from the people from that community. We've been working hard to preserve documents from the community. We have a file on the Ramapo Indians, and we continue to collect these. We worked with Ed Bennett to process artifacts from the Roe Van Horn House here on Road 202 that tells the story of the people that lived there as of 1700. As Judith just said, we have Ed in February, I think it's February the 7th, he's going to be giving a lecture on his latest research on the Ramapo Indians. Each year we have at least one lecture on the Ramapo Indians and Native Americans in the area. So I invite you to go to the Mauer Museum website, come to the museum. Any group that wants to come from the college will open anytime. You're not restricted to the hours there. You can make arrangements, and we welcome you all. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, my name is John Rucker. I'm from a group called the Eastern Light Project, and I'm just speaking on behalf of this circle here. We came up with a couple of suggestions, some of them addressing, society, the changes that society could make in order to prevent stuff like this from happening in the future, as well as on an individual level, some of the changes that we can reflect on and make. To talk back about some of the other suggestions relating to education, I think it's definitely important that we educate people as far as the true history of these people. But also, if you look at just the effectiveness of education around racism in our schools, there's a lot of education about Black History Month and stuff like that. It's been really effective for eliminating some of that racism. And if we can make the education around racism a little bit more current around these people, that might be very helpful. So a young girl at our table who said that she'd never heard the term Jackson Whites, you know. So maybe if we educated people about the racism that's still continuing right now in this world, people would be a little bit more aware of how to respond to that and relate to it. A chief came over and he was talking about how the earth is speaking to us right now with all the environmental crises that are happening. And you know, I said that, you know, that's some wisdom to show that the world is a reflection of us, you know, and the world wants us to wake up, and the world is speaking to us to allow ourselves to feel what's happening on this planet right now, to allow ourselves to feel the violence that's going on and the destruction that's going on, to really become passionate about the truth and sharing that with people that, you know, to start living that truth, very passionately, you know, to open up to what's happening on this planet and really become inspired to be that change that you want to see, and then share that with other people. We also spoke of, you know, just to share the importance of this culture that these people carry, these ancient cultures, to show that, you know, these people have a tremendous amount of wealth to offer to the community, and if we can work somehow at connecting this tribe to the community, you know, I think that we need to change the story, because there's a story about these people going on that's not true. We need to tell the true story, because the truth is about these people, you know, they're not incestuous, you know, and whatever we make them out to be, they're actually like some of the most upstanding people in our community who are standing for the earth, who are standing for, you know, environmental protection, who are actually really, you know, just we should be putting these people up on a pedestal and praising them, you know. So we need to tell that story, the true story of the Ramapo. And besides that, you know, just talking about culture, I think that, you know, the problem really stems, the root of the problem is the culture that now predominates our society is a very sick and twisted culture centered around arrogance and materialism and hatred and, you know, humiliation, and just like, this is what we're watching on TV, you know, so we need to find a way to change that culture and to really give birth to a better culture and to shine a light on the old culture that is beautiful.
So we have a few more people who already heard, and then we wanted to just have a final comment from members of the panel. So the gentleman.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Mercer. I'm a retired executive director of Settlement House in New York City. My question is for the attorney. The recent decision to revisit BP's penalties for what they did in the South, and the fact that I think there are 13 appellate courts in the United States, and 9 of them are controlled by sort of the Federalist Society, which are corporatists. How successful have you been in court?
In court for what? We've never been in court.
Oh, you guys have never been to court about this?
Not about, I mean, the Ford issue, the dumping issue?
Yeah.
I didn't personally work on that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know the tribe at that time. It was my understanding that individual families retained a class action type attorney, and the story is portrayed in the movie Man versus Ford. I personally find that very unappealing, that story and that representation. But that's just my personal opinion.
Thank you.
I'd just like to give sort of a different kind of lay response. One of the real interesting things, and it's going on to this moment with the dumping and et cetera in Ringwood, they have used every possible corporate, media, bureaucratic, insidious, community-splitting device known to man. Mm-hmm. They've done a better job than the United States Army PSYOPs Division. And for that alone, there needs to be some questioning of exactly what and who leads that effort against the tribal people and against the cleanup of the water everybody's drinking. And it's never, ever have I heard it addressed in a public meeting. They have worked tirelessly, including the lady, I wish I had her name, talked about environmental protection. I'll leave you with one story and get off. So people said, you know, we're all going to have our own community, we're going to be okay, we're going to clean this up and get rid of the waste. I happened to be at this lady's home one day, she said, ain't nobody doing that. That's foolishness. But yet they sold the story that they were actually going to help the community from an official basis and told the community members they were going to help provide them with decent homes and safe homes. When they knew for a fact it was a joke. And you know why it works? Because you're dealing with essentially an economically powerless community.
Thank you, Chief Perry. The conversation can go on for a very long time, and in fact it should. But we have a commitment to use this room probably for something else in a bit. My reservation is long over. So I think we're going to wind this session down. I wanted to just say a couple things. One is that Eric's comment about following up on this is an important one, and the next step, which we have set up with the Ramapo Lenape Nation, is to have a showing of a brand new movie called American Native, which is going to be on Sunday, February the 9th. You are all invited to that event, and so that will be coming up very soon, and I think it will be a really important event, hopefully, to really addressing the issues of stigma, because it really attempts to portray the tribe in its native ways, and it's hopefully a good antidote to what we've been talking about. We have events going on all the time through our master's program in sustainability studies. I did leave some information about the master's program by the door, but I also left a pad of paper, and if you want to be on the mailing list and you're not currently, I would love you to jot your name down, and we'll make sure that we let you know about events like the February 9th event. We do programs a lot, and we look forward to having everyone here as part of the audience and participating in those events and part of our community here at Ramapo College. So on behalf of the college, it's been a privilege to work with Chief Perry and Chief Mann and with the rest of our panel and Chief DeGroat, and to really have a chance to air these opinions and feelings and reactions to this movie. I have a feeling that the story of Out of the Furnace is not at all over. I think this conversation begins something that will be a continuing set of events, and I wouldn't be surprised, and we will try to get some of the players in the movie out for further conversations. But in the meantime, I think it's important to build on the positive, so I hope to see you on February 9th as we have a chance to really do that. So thank you for attending and participating, and see you again.